Hello, hello, ladies. Welcome, welcome. We are so excited you are here. Shelby and I have just been talking about this for a while now. And we've just been in prayer and in praise and thankfulness for this opportunity. So we just hope our hope here is that you can feel like you're sitting at the table with other ladies. Please use this chat. I love seeing all your names. I recognize so many of you in there. Sitting at a table with ladies discussing these big life things of time management, time stewardship. Shelby and I both have such a strong desire to steward well everything the Lord has given us. We're both homeschool moms of busy families, right? And we want to honor the Lord with everything that we do and live large lives because life is beautiful and grand with joy and peace in our homes. So that is our hope here, to encourage you in that, to give you some tools and ideas. Maybe you're coming to this call because you're where we both were. I'm going to speak for you too, Shelby. I'm guessing it's the same. A couple years ago, I remember having three little kids on a hip or on my lap or at my feet, looking around my house. Everything felt dirty or messy, having these ideas and dreams and goals and, a text box full and company coming over and just going through a cycle of burnout over and over again. And it would leave me on the floor crying. It would leave me anxious or snappy at my kids. And friends, if you have felt that, I just want you to know you are in a safe place. You're not broken. It's not you. I think Shelby's going to share, we've been talking about this, just how the system that we've always had for time management and been taught, maybe you've gone on YouTubes or podcasts or different books, isn't designed for a Proverbs 31 style woman, for us in our homes, how we need something different that aligns with what our life looks like, right? And we all know that's so different than someone maybe in the workforce or in a different career. So we want to show you those tools. And if you're on the floor, if you're feeling like, Lord, I know all of this is so good, but I can't carry all of this and it's too heavy and it weighs too much, to help you get off of it, to help you feel lighter, to show you that you're equipped. So this is hopefully the first of a few. Shelby and I met a couple months ago at a homeschool conference, and you guys, it was like instant connection. I told my husband, I feel like I'm talking to myself with everything she's saying. Both having this strong desire to empower women. If you've been following me for a while on Instagram, you've seen me put out like different printout sheets and different things and questions and prompts to design the day to be joyous. And I've always thought maybe one day I'll make a planner. And so when Shelby had this beautiful planner, I thought, oh, good, now I don't have to. And so this is the tool that Shelby's designed. And whether you're able to get this or not, this is just a webinar to serve you in some of these skills. So thank you so much, Shelby, for giving of your time. And all the ladies here, we're going to be asking you questions. So please use the chat freely. We're breaking this down into two different departments. You'll see here there is a poll button. If you click the poll, we're going to ask you to tell us what your personality type is. And if you did not take the test, Shelby's going to give you a little overview of it. I'm a visionary, if y'all couldn't guess. Too many ideas, right? But she's going to give you an overview, and we're going to do this because the first type is talking about personality, and then we're going to talk about your life and your priorities, and the connection is really important between the two. So you're going to want to know that type. So Shelby, thank you again. I'm just going to pass it over to you, and we can kind of toss this back and forth, and thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for doing this with me, Amber. I'm so excited. Like, this is a fulfillment of so many years of praying that the Lord would first help me figure out my life, because what you were saying, I relate to that so much, especially when my eldest daughter was born. I was working full time and I had just had a baby, and I knew one day I wanted to homeschool, but I was looking at my house and my schedule and the fact that I never slept more than 3 hours a night, and I was crashing. I almost went to the hospital, and I was like, how am I going to homeschool in the middle of all of this? And I want a lot of kids. I don't know how this is all going to go together. And so for me, it became this really deep-seated, God is calling me to figure this out in my life. It's so much more than me hitting my deadlines this month. It's so much more than me being able to feel like, you know, even that my house is clean. Like, it was so much deeper than that. It was not about picture perfection or making sure that everything just like looks like color coded and all that, even though I kind of like color coding. But it was more so about what was I called to do and how could I possibly fit everything God was calling me to do into like a day, an actual day, and with the choices that I was making. And I could not figure out how to bring all of that together. And I was so overwhelmed. And at some point I was just like, I've got to figure this out. There's no options but to deep dive research until I know that I am confident in the way that I'm stewarding my time, because I know that our time is like the only unrenewable resource we have. Everything else, money, stuff, opportunities, literally everything else comes back around. You can access it again. But time, once it's gone, with our time with our kids, once that's gone, you know, that's in the past, it's in history. And that makes our time very precious. And we spend a lot of time trying to figure out, like, how do we steward our money well? If we can apply that to how do we steward our time well, that's even more foundational, and it makes everything else that we need to and want to do in our lives possible.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
I love seeing all of these we've got a lot of visionaries here in the poll from what I'm seeing, and task crushers, and we have some strategists and some coactives. So this is really fun to see that. And we're going to help you see how your productivity personality connects to everything that we're talking about, because it's very, very important to know what it is when it comes to developing a time management strategy that you actually follow through on and that doesn't fall apart as soon as life hits. But I do want to make sure everyone can hear us just fine, right? Like, connection's good, audio's good for both of us. And yes, Naomi, we will definitely be explaining what each productivity personality means and what it's about. And so let's see, just make sure if y'all just could say that you can hear us, everything's good. Okay, great. Perfect. Thank y'all so much. All right. I'm going to pull up the slides here so that we can start talking about these strategies. So here we go. And it did not have it on the first one, so I have to pull it all the way back. So let me run through really quick the productivity personality, because in case you didn't take the quiz, right now you can go ahead and vote with the one that you think resonates with you the most. So there are 4 productivity personality types. They are visionary. The visionary is all about ideas, but struggles to do the follow through, implementation, the practical side of everything, and is the starter, but struggles with the finishing, right? Okay, so visionary, we're both visionaries here. And then the task crusher is going to get things done. She loves lists, to-do lists, and will work off her list all day long, but can struggle to feel present and connected to her long-term goals sometimes, and feels like a lot of times she's juggling busy work. The strategist loves systems, loves planners, color coding, calendars, all the things, all the systems. But what the strategist can struggle with is being able to like onboard their loved ones to actually follow their rhythms and their systems and make their systems work with other people's needs really well. And then the coactive is socially motivated. So like thrives inside of group work. When everybody's working together, when they're on a team, or when the family's working together on a project, they're very motivated. But the coactive can really struggle when it comes to being alone and executing by themselves. So it's like they have to have their team around to feel motivated a lot of times. So based on those things, whatever resonated with you, you can go ahead and click the poll there and update our stats there. And that's going to really help us to be able to serve you guys really directly. So, all right, I'm going to pull up the slides. Yeah.
Karen said, can you be a visionary and a task crusher? I feel like
yes.
those, if you can,
absolutely.
I am as well,
Karen. yes, there are combo personalities. So, and we only put the 4 there, but most people are usually a combo personality. Some people are really strong in one area, but a lot of times we do have those wings. And there are people too who are like, I can do all of these things. It just depends on the season. Those people, I would say, regardless of if they're socially motivated, a lot of times we tell them they're coactives because they are able to pull from all the different strengths and bring them together. And so, yeah, knowing your combo really helps because then you can say, okay, I resonate with these strengths. I have these particular pitfalls. They come together like this. And then also knowing how to bring them together is very helpful because then like that's when the magic happens. Like when you can say, here's my weakness and my strengths, and I can then target those with the way that I set up my time management. That's incredible. The results that you get, and you actually like the rhythms and systems and everything you came up with because they serve you at a very deep level. So, yeah.
I love some of the comments. You ladies are cracking me up. I'm a visionary and I'd probably be a task crusher, but I have my hands in too many projects. We get you. And now I'm just tired. Yes. Okay. So keep sharing in the chat because I see a lot of names I recognize. I want to know what you are, but you're going to get into kind of the old system and why we need a different one, right?
Yes. Let's dive into that.
If you haven't printed this out yet, there is the life in the jar that we're going to be working through. So go ahead and grab that. Okay, Shelby, take it away.
Yes. Okay. So what's this jar thing that you're seeing on your worksheet, right? So we are bringing in productivity personality. That's like all about you. And then the jar metaphor, that's all about the limitations everyone has, right? Like how time works in general. And we're using a metaphor to make it really easy to wrap our minds around. Whenever I was in high school, my wonderful grandfather, sent me an email. This professor gets up and shows the class this jar. They fill the jar up with sand, and then they put in small pebbles, and then they put in rocks, and then they cannot fit all the rocks in the jar. They jump out the jar and they start with the big rocks. And then they put in the smaller rocks and then the pebbles. And then the sand. And the same amount of volume fit, but they started the second time with putting their big rocks in first. The first time when they put the sand in first, everything wouldn't fit. Well, that was supposed to be this metaphor of time management and priorities, right? If you start with the sand, then there doesn't feel like there's enough time, like there's enough space for everything that you're called to do. But if you just start with the big rocks, then everything will fit perfectly in your jar. No problem, right? So I read this and I was like, that's awesome. And then I was like, I'm overwhelmed because I had no idea how to figure out what my rocks and pebbles and everything were. I had no idea how to clean out my jar and start over. I didn't even realize that was a thing I could do. I was just looking at my life and going, I filled it up with sand and there's lots of it. I'm feeling like I'm overwhelmed by all these random things going on. Like life is happening to me. And my biggest, most life-giving goals don't have a place to fit. I also didn't know my productivity personality. And so what it always felt like was like my jar was just too small. Like my dreams were huge and my rocks were huge that I wanted to do, the things I wanted to do, and I couldn't figure out how to get them in. So what I would do is just ignore my jar. And I'd just be like, you know what? I don't know how that's supposed to work, but I'm just going to go for my dreams and I'm going to hit it as hard as I can. And I'd run until all of a sudden I'm overcommitted. I've got fires everywhere. And then I spend all my time just trying to put out my fires and meet my commitments and meet my deadlines. Then I crash. Then I'm like, I'm not doing anything. And I get depressed. And then I'm like, okay, I want to try again. Right. And I'm just in this cycle of doing that thing because I never figured out and never learned, okay, what do you do if your jar is built incorrectly and if the rocks won't fit? So that's the context for this. Have you ever felt like that, Amber?
Oh my goodness. So, so much. And then then you're feeling like a failure. And then I remember just thinking, I'm just not good enough. I
Mhm.
cannot keep my house clean, homeschool my kids, keep relationships, keep my business. I just can't. And so it's like you just throw your hands up in the air. And that's when you find yourself on the floor, and I think that those are just all lies of the enemy of you can't, you can't, you can't. And that just perpetuates itself. And then that's where our home feels that from us.
Mhm.
My biggest goal in time management has been to have a home that feels full of peace and joy, that when people are under my roof, whether they're my family or friends, that they can feel that peace. And I think that is the biggest blessing of time
Yeah.
management. So yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I
I could
think
talk
that's
about it
such
all day.
no, that's such a huge point. And I think that that's something I love. This is why I'm so excited about us doing this together, because you get it. Like the whole purpose of this is not perfection or like
Mhm.
everything is just Instagrammable every time. Everything you walk into your home and it's like, wow, this person deserves to be in Pinterest. Like that's not our goal. Our goal is not that, or even to perform for our, entertain and perform for our guests so that they think, wow, they really have it all together when they come into our home.
Mhm.
Like that's not the purpose of
Mhm.
time management. Like that's not what God gave it to us for. What the purpose of ordering our time and our affections aright is so that we can bear God's image in the world, and like having
Yes.
that peace, the fruit of the spirit, peace and love and joy and gentleness and all those things. Whenever people come into our home, then when everything's ordered right, we don't care so much they walked in and just walked past like the massive laundry pile, because we know and we're confident about the way that we're prioritizing, right?
Yes. Yep. We can
Yeah.
see our priorities taking
Yes.
effect. And I think that's what causes a lot of failure is knowing that what's important to us is on fire, not going
Yes.
well. So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So this is the metaphor, right? If this is what your jar looks like, reacting to life's randomness is taking the best of you. And that
Mhm.
means that there is not enough room in your jar for your priorities. If that is you and it feels like everything can be just like all of a sudden is on fire and you don't even expect it. Sometimes things are good. And then sometimes it's just like, bah, and it all just comes up and hits you. You're not alone. This is a most common cycle. Oh, I don't know what's happening to my. Oh, I didn't go backwards. That's why. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll just go to this one. This is a most common cycle. And you are committed, right? Like if you're here, it's very obvious you're committed to a beautiful, productive lifestyle, that you want to love people with the way that you spend your time and you invest it. But you also struggle with that cycle, right? Where you are like, I'm putting out too many fires, so I'm going to sit down. It's the life overhaul burnout cycle, right? Too many fires. So sit down. I'm going to overhaul everything. Everything pause. We're going to overhaul it all. I'm going to get all my systems and my calendar and everything straight. And you spend a lot of time doing that. And then your schedule falls apart again as soon as it hits real life, probably because you had no idea what your productivity personality was to make sure that it all went together, or your productivity season. There's so many things that go into this. It all falls
Mhm.
apart. And so then you sink back into that overwhelm. You're just scrolling. You're watching everybody else seem to have it all together on your phone. You're wondering, why am I such a hot mess? Look at everybody else looking like they just can adult, and I have no idea how, and I'm far too old to be concerned about why can I not adult. And
Mhm.
then you just kind of dissociate from everything. And then the fires just become too much. And you're like, forget it. I'm going to try again. Right. And then you try to do the whole life overhaul. But because your system is not built for you and it's not built around your real priorities, your real jar, the rocks and pebbles and everything else that you actually need to have in your jar, it's somebody else's that you try to copy and paste into your life.
Yeah. Yep.
That's why you end up in this life overhaul burnout cycle, and you can't get out by just trying to do the same things. And it's not your fault if you just go to all the free time management content on the internet trying to figure it out. What you're going to find is, even though you have a strong why for following through on your goals, even though you have plenty of time telling technology, you've got apps and you've got timers and you've got this and you've got that, like you've got AI at this point who could plan your life for you, right? Like you've got access to all this technology and you have endless free content on time management and you still struggle with this cycle. So why? Why is it that our schedules fall apart every time real life hits? You're going to get the answer to that next. That's what we're talking about here so that you can stop going into the, I'm just going to dissociate from everything and doom scroll until my fires force me back off the couch. We're going back into that phase. Like we don't have to do that. It's not what we're called to do. And the problem is not with you. It's not that you didn't figure out how to implement that freebie or that Pinterest, how to clean your house perfectly, system perfectly, like that you just weren't good enough for it. What it is that these most time management plan content and systems and planners out there don't address 3 things we all experience. And there's actually more than just 3, but we're just going to talk a little bit about these 3 to dive into that. Let's see here. We've got the Zeigarnik effect, context switching, and decision fatigue. And I wanted to touch on those 3 because there's something that all of us, I know, experience. And the Zeigarnik effect, see if you relate to this. This is something that I've noticed, like the most productive mamas struggle, and tell me in the chat if you relate to this. The most productive mamas struggle to feel present because of the Zeigarnik effect. What that is I'll just tell a story about it really quick. There was a lady who went to the restaurant with all of her friends, and the waiter was taking everybody's orders, and all of a sudden she was like, he's not holding any paper. All of this is going to be wrong. And this is terrible. So then she was like, I'm never going to get my food right. Well, turns out he gets all the food right for this entire big crowd. And she's like, how is that possible? This guy has an amazing memory. Well, she loses her scarf, comes back. It's like, I'm going to ask the waiter with the amazing memory. He'll know where my scarf is. He had no idea who she was, no idea where she sat. And she was like, this is weird. I thought he had an amazing memory. She started studying it because she was a psychology student. Her name was Zeigarnik. And she realized there's this thing that your brain does when you start a task, but you don't finish that task. It's like an open tab in your brain. So now in our modern world, what are we doing? We're giving ourselves task. Like it's literally just sitting there looking at our phone, and we have 72 tasks that just entered our head. And then we hear a beep over there and a notification over there, and then we have a child over there needing us. All of these open loops into our open tabs in our head, and we have no idea what to do with them. So the more productive you are, the more that you're trying to handle everything, the more tabs you're opening without being able to close them unless you finish the task. But who can finish every task for their open tabs in their head in one day? None of us. So we try to do a to-do list, right? We're like, we'll just write it all down, get it out of my head. That's a great strategy, except for the to-do list causes the problem with the second one, and we'll get into that. Well, yeah, I'll tell you how to solve all these. Let me do it like that. So the second one, the to-do list makes the second one a big problem. The second one is context switching. So now you've got this big to-do list and you're walking around with it, right? And you're like, I've got a minute to work. Oh my gosh. Flipping it around, flipping pages. Okay, I've got 72 things on here. What do I do? And then before you even decide what you're going to do, your time's gone. The baby wakes up, whatever it is. Or say that you start making progress on it, but you don't get very far because you're exhausted and you're easily distracted. You're context switching. It's got on your list. It's like, do the laundry, look at the spreadsheets, get back to that person, do, your appointments, research that business idea. Okay, these are all different contexts in your mind, and you're asking your brain to go boom, 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 boom. And what we don't realize and what we don't know is that research says that every time your context switches, it takes 20 minutes to get back into the focus mode. So what we're not only doing that is we're like looking at our to-do list, we're getting started on whatever project is next on there, and then we get interrupted by a child, and we check our phone 5 times. So we may have done 2 hours of work on that project, but every time we were interrupted on that project, we lost 40 minutes of time because we had to get out of that context into another one, back into that context. So see how the sand, all this distraction, all this randomness is filling up our jar and we're not even realizing that that's happening. Mm-hmm. And then we're overwhelmed, right? Nothing fits. There's not enough time, right? And then also when we're making progress through, we're causing the third problem to happen. So say we're like, I'm going to muscle through. I'm getting through this to-do list today. I'm going to be really smart about it and only pick 10 things off this list. Going to get them done today. We get about 4 things through if you're really, really disciplined, and you want to pull your hair out because you're exhausted from decision fatigue. And that's the third thing. You have spent so much time already, so many decisions before 11 a.m. You are deciding, what are we having for breakfast? What are all the kids wearing? What time are we going to actually walk out the door today? What time are we going to do this? When am I going to talk to my husband about that? When am I going to respond to this email, to this text? You're doing all of that, plus all the context switching between each one of these different things, plus you're opening every single tab in your brain as you go. Do you see how this works? It's the perfect storm for us to feel like we are failures. But in reality, we are not failing. It's that we've never been taught these real things that are happening in our brains, and all the time management content out there is actually designed for something that is not us. And we're going to get into that in just a second. Yeah, go for it, Amber.
I know. I was going to say, I think you could just keep going right into it.
Okay.
All the chats are like, yes, show me. And then you're adding littles on top of this, or a nursing baby, or toddlers, or your kiddo that needs help with their math problem, while you're trying to do something else. And it causes a lot of anxiety and snappy moms, that, quick answers. And so.
Yes. And I just want to give you affirmation. I know we've got anxious people in the text, so let me get to the solution as fast as I can here, but I want to encourage you. You are not, I have been doing this for years. I have worked with hundreds of women. I have a podcast about this that has gone all over the world. I have talked to so many people, so much coaching, and every time I have found that anybody I'm working with, they are not just bad at time management. Your life is not actually just too crazy to find peace and confidence in your decisions, truly, no matter what you have going on. You might be in a wildfire season where you're probably not here. If that's the case, that's possible, where you need to take a break and just what's going on with this. Outside of a wildfire season, if you're in survival mode, your life's not too crazy to solve those problems. You can make progress immediately, literally right now. And you're not just lazy and undisciplined. None of these things are solved by just trying to make yourself more disciplined. Can you be more disciplined to go through the 3-step thing I was just talking about and overcome that with discipline? No matter how disciplined you are, you can't. It's not what our brains are created, how our brains are created to work. So your chaos is not an indication of failure. You just haven't been taught how to use the Zeigarnik effect in your favor, because the Zeigarnik effect can actually train your subconscious to effortlessly prioritize your truest goals. You also haven't learned how to manage your context switching as a busy mama who has not been given guaranteed focus hours for deep work. And you haven't learned how to prevent decision fatigue from causing you to shelve all your most life-giving goals to someday when life slows down, which we know never happens without us doing something about it. You have to be taught how to do every single one of these things. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But the whole part of this is that you've got to learn how to approach time like a CEO, rather than the way that conventional time management content is teaching you how to approach time. Mm-hmm. So I got to tell you a story about conventional time management content. Was all created, like the stuff if you Google, how do I solve this problem, right? What it is drawing from are books that were written. These strategies were written in the 1960s for cubicle life, 9 to 5 cubicle life, expecting that the people who are reading these books are sitting in cubicles and they have a boss above them who's like, here's your perfect calendar. I've thought it all through for you. It's going to work out with all the organization. Just do your to-do list. If you check everything off, we'll protect your focus in this quiet cubicle. You'll get everything done and you'll be a nice little cog in the organizational wheel and everything will be great. It came from this idea of central planning with people at the top who are making all the little cogs below them work, like a machine. That was the dream when conventional time management content, all the books that you read, all those courses and everything else were built for corporate life. And that was the dream. And they're like, this is how it's going to work. But times have changed, right? And that's actually not the reality for most of us. We're not going into a quiet office, being handed our color-coded calendar and our little to-do list and being told, now we'll leave you alone. They'll handle the phone. Just get your stuff done. That's not our lives, right? We have kids and especially since 2020, right? So many of us are doing things and our lives have been integrated together in so many ways. We've got our kids and our work and our schedules and our farms for you, and we've got our grocery shopping and we are making sales while waiting for our groceries to be loaded in the back of the car because that's how our lives are, right? They are fully integrated and they're becoming more and more fully integrated. And we have all of this opportunity, which is honestly amazing, to manage ourselves. So we're not employees being managed by the higher ups. We've got to figure out how to become the higher ups. We have to be the ones who are creating the schedules and creating the to-do list and capacity planning for our homes. And that's our job now. The job that the CEOs were doing has now been handed to us. And if we think like a CEO and we learn CEO time management strategies, we are going to see everything change in our approach to time management. And we're going to find that what we craft for ourselves and for our families doesn't fall apart the minute real life hits because it's crafted from a CEO mindset, not okay, here's what I need to do today. Somebody else is going to solve for all the other problems and help protect my focus, because that's not true. Nobody else is doing that. It's our job to do that. And I believe that this vision was actually cast for us all the way back in Proverbs 31 of this beautiful vision for executive management that women are called to do and that we are very equipped by God to do. Mm-hmm. And there's so many scriptures that talk about time management. I didn't realize that before I started having my own time management crisis, but I remember that I was going through, I was buying programs and planners and all of this stuff. And I was feeling so overwhelmed and sad. I can't figure this out. Which dream am I going to have to kill? Because at this point, I don't know what else to do. And I was crying about it. And I all of a sudden had this thought was, what was the scripture that says, if you ask God for wisdom, he will give it to you. And that scripture came to my mind in James. And I thought, I haven't actually asked God about my time management. And so I got on my knees. I remember I had this color-coded thing that I had put together that just didn't work. I know the videos are in front of the references. I'll have to drop them. But I had this color-coded thing that was falling apart and wasn't working for me. And I just remember pushing it aside, getting down on my knees and just asking God, opening my Bible and being I literally don't know where to turn. I have never seen a Bible study on this before. I need help with my time management, God. And he began to show me that the scriptures are chock full of vision casting and principles that we can apply to our time management. Thank you so much. And that let me just we've got Genesis 1:8, right? She just put in the chat, Genesis 1:28, We are called to take dominion over the earth. And we are not called to be taken dominion over by things like time and all these crazy things that are going on in our lives. We are called to take dominion. And that calling was for both men and women together. And we are called in Psalms 8, it talks about how God has put his creation under our feet for us to take dominion over. And if we don't do it, it is going to take dominion over us. We have to be active in that. Psalms 90:12 is a prayer from Moses where he was saying, teach us to number our days that we may apply our hearts to wisdom. And their problem, right? Remember children of Israel in the wilderness? What was their problem? Complaining about everything. They were complaining about all the blessings God had given them. God brought them out of Egypt, gave them self-management as their birthright and said, just follow my law, manage yourselves. I'm about to give you a land, houses you didn't build, fruitfulness beyond what you can imagine. And they complained about all the abundance. And in that state was when Moses was crying out to God, seeing how terribly the people were complaining and grumbling against what God had given them. And he said, teach us to number our days that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom, establish the work of our hands. Yea, establish it, Lord, because he knew our abundance and our productivity are going to come from the Lord. And it starts with gratitude. It starts with saying, he's given this to me and he's given it to me so that I can give it back to him and joyfully steward it, trusting and resting in him as the Lord of the Sabbath. And then we have Proverbs 31, which is a beautiful poem when you can see that she is absolutely exercising executive management in the estate that God has given her. And she does not eat the bread of idleness. She's getting up early. She's delegating to her household. She's staying up and checking to make sure that her merchandise is good, like checking her spreadsheets, right? Like she's not just letting life happen to her. She is proactively solving problems in her life. And that's the vision cast for biblical womanhood. And in 1 Timothy 5:14, we have the Greek word oikos despoteo, and that means the manager of the home, the guardian of the home, the one who is its despot of the home, who like is not like other people are supposed to be figuring this out for me. I'm supposed to be figuring this out. And the idea of a home at that time was so much more expansive. It actually encompassed all the different things that we're doing, including our work and our community outreach and all these types of things that God's called us to do. And it's very, very proactive. And of course, Ephesians 5:16 that says that we must redeem the time. And that means we must actively buy back the time because the days are evil. There is a war against us. And that the enemy wants us to look at the abundance God has given us, complain about it, and dissociate from it by scrolling on our phones and watching other people and living vicariously through other people. The enemy's like, great, I don't have to do anything else because they're not going to be abundant for the kingdom that way. Yeah. That's what the enemy is. He's got a war on our work. And so he is constantly trying to distract us from what God has called us to do. And so we are called to buy back the time, to redeem it. It's a very active thing, and it's a daily thing that we must do. But I want to give an encouragement, one final encouragement, biblical, and then we can talk for a second. And that is that if you are feeling overwhelmed by chaos and about like all the things that there are when it comes to this, it's like, that's a beautiful vision, but also like my life, you don't understand. It's crazy. I get it. Like, I very much get it. I'm not going to go into all the things, but everybody has things, guys. You don't see it by the online presentation because there's privacy and there's, respecting our family's privacy and all of that. But everybody has so much going on. And the people that you see who are living fruitful, abundant lives are not doing it because they just somehow don't have all the craziness that you have. I can promise you, like even the grief and everything else and all that's very real. And in our company, we do not talk about like, being productive regardless of what's going on, just throw out the grief time. We're not talking about passing, like everything. There's a season. We have to embrace everything that God providentially brings to us. But at the same time, we are not like I said, the enemy is trying to make us like take even the good, abundant things God has given us to steward, cleaning our homes, taking care of our children, helping them get a better education, working to find more real food and get more real food into our diets, all the different things that we're all trying to do, manage our businesses, and take these good things he's given us and say, it's too overwhelming, I don't want to even try to do it, and then not try. And that's what the enemy is trying to do. But if you feel chaos in your jar, I want to encourage you, and this is one of my favorite passages, is actually Genesis 1:2. You see there on the slide, it's got the dove and the waves, and I wanted to explain why I put that there. In Genesis 1:2, we have the creation of the world. It's before Genesis 3. There is no moral problems yet. No moral problems at all. Everything is still very good that God has created. But he creates the world without form and void, and darkness covers the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God, which is represented by a dove there, is brooding over the face of the waters. In the Hebrew there, we have a transition from chaotic to calm, life-giving waters. The chaotic deep, which is very meaningful to the Hebrews of that time, to the calm, life-giving waters, literally just with the Holy Spirit passing over the waters. What that tells us is the experience of chaos does not equal failure. Was God failing because there was chaos there? Or did he do that out of his great mercy and love for us so that we could see what we were about to walk into and model for us the ongoing ministry of bringing order out of chaos? That's what we're teaching today, the ongoing ministry of bringing order out of chaos. If you have chaos, then you are just being invited to participate in that ongoing ministry of bringing order out of chaos and image God, bear his image in that chaos, bring that order out. And that is going to take reliance on the Holy Spirit. And that's what we're doing. And he promises to give us everything we need for life and godliness. And that includes enough time. And that's what we're going to be diving into. So you're called to this. You're called to this. You're called to this. And, we know that he installed the heavens themselves have a calendar in the sky. Like he is so supportive of us succeeding in time stewardship and fruitfulness. He literally built a calendar into the sky. God cares about your time management. He wants to be very present in your time management. His word applies to your time management. You're called to bear his image, participating in that ongoing ministry of bringing order out of chaos. So when you wake up tomorrow morning or get off of this call and you walk right into chaos, I want you to remember, I am not a failure. I am being invited to participate in the ongoing ministry of bringing order out of chaos. And the dishes are going to get dirty again. And I'm going to clean up the living room and walk back in, and it's going to look like I never touched it. And that's going to happen because God has given us this ongoing ministry of bringing order out of chaos to create a life-giving environment for our families and for the people in our community, for our businesses, just like he did for us. See how that all goes together? Isn't it awesome?
Yep. I love it. I love how you said ongoing too. I just want to point that out. Like this isn't something you solve and then you're great and you never have any of these issues again. We're going to talk about seasons, but it's ongoing. It's a daily choice, decision, a way to view it and praise the Lord through it. So I love how you emphasize that.
Yes. And that's why we start with your productivity personality, because there are unique ways that God has called you to image him. He's given you strengths. And so maybe, for me, I'm a visionary and I tend to not have the strategist strengths. So I can struggle. I actually really struggle, guys. I own a cleaner company, but I want to let you in on it. I struggle with being on time. I struggle with being organized. I have in the past had such bad time blindness. It's been crazy. It's actually, my time blindness is healing because of using the Evergreen Hunting method. But that is, God has given me those strengths and unique ways he wants me to bear his image in all the things he's called me to do. And with my children, I want to encourage you that I think most people here are mamas. God gave your children the mama he wanted with your productivity personality, with your unique strengths. And he did that for a reason. So stop looking at your best friend and going, man, look at how she does everything. And I just can't make that happen in my life. You're not called to. The scripture says that comparison is not wise. We're not supposed to compare ourselves among ourselves. It's not wise. So instead of us trying to copy and paste what's working for other people, what I want to encourage is that God has called you to exercise executive management skills, step into the role he's calling you to do that's going to look very different from everybody else's, and step into that role and get a hold of your life. Make the changes you need to make, knowing that you are called to this, and he will help you. He will, because the decisions you make on a daily basis, he knows that ripples forward for generations. And he wants his children to reach out to him, to turn to him and say, I know I'm called to do so much, like that what I'm doing, my rhythms, whether or not I have enough time for my kids, all those things are going to have a huge impact for generations. And that's a lot. Lord, help me. And if you turn to him in prayer, he loves to help his children. He loves to answer those prayers. He promises to answer those prayers, and he will give you wisdom. It is a promise. All right. I think we covered all this. Chaos is not a sign of failure. Yes. So we are going to talk about how to clean out your jar and start over. And that is the workshop part of this. So we're going to do the priority map right now. And we just thought this would be really fun, and we can be here to like help you sort this out. So you've got here, and I'll cover what each one of these are. I've got mine here. It's part of a booklet that we have. This is how you clean out your jar. This is a deep planning exercise that you're doing right here, right now. And deep planning is such a critical missing piece for most mamas. Like deep work in general is a missing piece for most mamas. We expect ourselves to figure this out inside of our heads on the fly while being asked 3 different questions by 3 different people. And that expectation we have on ourselves doesn't make sense. Like no effective CEO would run their business that way. Would just be like, I'm just going to try to wing it, figure it out on the fly. And really the reason we do that as mamas is because we want to remain always available at all times. It's out of love that we do that. But we also, its boundaries are very loving and making space to be able to get ahead of these things, and also modeling for our children deep work. That's a huge deal because they need to have these skills too. So I'm really excited about y'all being here and doing this, because this is a form of deep work for yourself. You're investing in your own education right now about something that's so critical, and it's going to change everything for you if you can get your mind and heart wrapped around this. So let's talk about how to fill this out. This is your priority map. So you got the picture of the jar, right? And so what we want to do is dump out our jars, right? Start over, clean them out, and start with our foundational rocks. So I want you to take some time and write down 3 foundational rocks. These are things that matter in every season of your life. No matter what, like in 80 years, this will still matter to you. These foundational rocks. And y'all drop in the chat if anybody is confused about any of this, because I want to make sure everybody gets the support they need for this exercise.
I would love to know too, if you want to share, if anyone wants to share what's 1 or 2 of their foundational rocks.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I can give some examples. Mine, I have loving and being loved by my Father, the Lord. And I wrote it that way. So like I've done this before and I kept it in my planner. And it was like my relationship with God is what that said. But I rewrote it this time because, and when I do this, I like to create the emphasis, like, what am I focusing on right now? You know, so I've got my relationship with the Lord. And then I have as my second one, my relationship with my family, with my husband, my kids, and joy in our home. I really focus, like I highlighted that on my second rock is joy in our home as a focus. And then my third one was stewarding the talents that he's given me faithfully. And I put that there because throughout my entire life, you know, I told y'all before that I felt like my dreams were too big for my jar, you know, and I was started even asking the question, like, what dream needs to die? And when I realized God had given me, especially as a visionary, but everybody has, you know, these are just different aspects of God's image, you know, and some people are stronger in visionary, but everybody has vision, right? Some people are stronger in task crushing, but everybody can get things done. So like, especially though, as a visionary, like, I can't let my dreams die. Like there's no motivation if my dreams are gone, you know? And so like putting that there was so important for me as a visionary to say, like, I've got to steward the talents that God has given me. And have that as a foundational rock in every season. Okay, so let's see some of these questions. And if you put the questions in the Q&A too, that also helps me to like sort through. Is each relationship a rock or is relationships a rock? And it depends. So this is the reason we did that for a reason why this is not like 10 things long, right? We want you to really think about what matters in every season. And some, like I said, season to season, it can look different whenever you do this, but the idea is right now, what do you need to be recognizing as your ongoing rock? So if you are struggling in your relationships in general, then you could put relationships there. If you know that you're meaning specifically your relationships with like your family, you could put that there. So it's very open-ended too, like what works for you, because this is about a priority map for your life. And there's no way we could copy and paste and say, here's what your foundational rocks need to be.
I think it's really important too that there's just three. Like I'm wanting more lines because I want to put more, but remembering that I want to point this back out, friends, is remembering that that jar is everyone's natural limitations, right? Like that is you can't stuff more in there. We are one human. So that means prioritizing well. So when you ask in 80 years, this is still going to have mattered that this was a foundational rock. I think that's a really good question there, but we can't have everything be the highest priority.
That's right. Yeah. And those are the ones that are in there. Like every time you dump out your jar, those are like super glued in there. They don't come out, right? Like every time you create systems, the systems are built around those things staying in your jar and being prioritized. That's how important they are. And as far as everything else that we're interested in, that's not just three things. We're about to talk about those things next. So that's why y'all let us know when you feel like you're ready to go to the next one. Because we will talk about what do you do about the things that are very, very important, but you're like in 80 years, like they'll be important, but they're not like central in 80 years anymore. You know, so what does that look like? And we'll talk about that. Right. So these are things like for me, I have the growth of our family business is one that I've got in as a seasonal rock for myself. At times I've had my health be like, I've really got to prioritize this. This has got to take up space, right? There's been seasons like right now, what I'm looking at is actually my homeschool version of this. And so I have in here some homeschool goals that I have as my seasonal rock where I'm like, I need to prioritize these and let them take up the space they have to take up in my life before everything else. So there's only two for a reason, and that's to get you. Let me go ahead and explain what the life-giving pebbles are because it might help you with your seasonal rocks. So the life-giving pebbles are things that are good in your life, but they may not be central or you might not know where they're going. So for a long time, my business was a life-giving pebble. And I had to treat it a little bit more like a hobby than I wanted to because I needed to, like, I didn't have space, like, because my seasonal rocks were my health and my home, like, literally just getting my home operations in order, decluttering. All of that took up that space, and I knew that. So I had to make my business a life-giving pebble, but I didn't let it fall out of my jar, and I didn't let it get displaced by sand. And so that life-giving pebble grew to now being a seasonal rock. Do you see how that works? But also seeing that my foundational rocks are my relationship with the Lord and my family and the joy in our home and stewarding the talents that God has given me faithfully anchors what that seasonal rock is, which is growing our business. So if my business were to displace joy in my home, then I've got to rethink how much space it's taking up or how that looks. Does that make sense? So it helps you just put your priorities straight and say, these foundational rocks never get dumped out and never get displaced no matter what. But my seasonal rocks, they are going to take up space, and that means saying no to some things. But my life-giving pebbles will have space in there. Things like potentially starting a business. I've got, again, this is my homeschool version for this year that I did. So I've got nature hikes, watercoloring with the kids. I actually put our home updates on here, like I want to wallpaper some walls and different things. Novel writing, thrifting. You might have other things like what is it that's life-giving to you that should be in your jar and it's going to take up space and you don't want sand, randomness, scrolling, all the other things to keep you from actually getting to do those life-giving pebbles. Does that make sense? So that's how those work. So I'm going to give you some time to think about what are your seasonal rocks, get those written down, and then what are your life-giving pebbles, the things that you want to make sure are not getting displaced by laying on the couch doom scrolling.
If you wouldn't want sand to take over these life-giving pebbles, like that is a really good question there.
Can you get that up for you guys?
So my seasonal rocks, I'm just going to share it here while you're doing that. So my foundational are my relationship with the Lord, my immediate family, so my husband and my kids, and then stewardship of my resources, which is our business and our finances, right? Like, because that in 80 years, it'll matter when I look at our family's goals. And then seasonal rocks, because of the holidays, and we have so much family coming into town and a lot of family things going on, I put extended family because that is something that I need to make a lot of space in my jar for. Siblings coming over, parents, nieces, nephews, all of that during this season. And then hunting season. Some of you hunting wives out there can understand that is a own seasonal rock right there. So those are in mine right now. I would love to hear what some of your maybe seasonal rocks are. And I love how this gives space. Like I see Leah on here. Leah, I was thinking how when you had a really sick kiddo, like that was its own seasonal rock during that season of life, that needed to take priority.
Yeah, I think that's such a huge deal. Like if you are in a chronic, and I love talking to chronic illness mamas because I'm a chronic illness mama. And if you are in a chronic illness season where you're like, I have nothing, I have nothing more to give besides just being there for my kids and then like trying to get healthy. And that's in the season that you're in and tending to a flare up or whatever else that it is. It's so real. And let me encourage you that these kinds of things are so good for your health too, because what they do is they reduce your anxiety and help you to see that like, okay, my business, because for a long time, because of my health issues, my business had to be a tiny little pebble. And I'm like, my health has to take up that space instead. And to know though that I had a future for my little tiny pebble, that I wanted it to stay in my jar, that I was going to keep tending to it, and just trusting the Lord by, okay, home and home operations and homeschooling and my rhythms and my health. Those are my two things. The Lord was so gracious because that took up my space until it was like no longer needing to be central for that season. Like I got healthier, right? And so that, but the anxiety of thinking you're missing out by tending to your health really makes it harder to make it past your health issues. So just trusting the Lord and embracing your limitations is such a huge part of healthiness. But let me suggest to you guys too, and I know y'all might have already picked out your seasonal rocks, and maybe if you just want to add another one for this, and that is that mastering time management for anybody who has not mastered time management is automatically by default a seasonal rock. If you have not mastered time management, if you feel like that is like the biggest pain point that you have in your life, then you need your seasonal rocks. You need to make that a seasonal rock and expect for it to take up space in your life. Okay. If you can, and it actually doesn't take that long to do if you focus on it. And that's why we created a whole program and everything that's like, let's just make it as simple as possible, streamlined as possible, learn this, 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 and this, and you're off to the races. Like, if you can learn that, then everything else that you want to do in your future becomes accessible because you know how to prioritize, you know how to follow through and get things done, you know how to work with your productivity personality instead of against it. So, yeah,
Yeah. And
awesome.
I see a lot of people putting several things on seasonal rocks. I think I think the key part, correct me if I'm wrong, Shelby, is just actually picking a few that are so that you
Mm-hmm.
can put more time on that and that those can shift over to life giving, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you're in a maybe a rocky marriage season where your marriage needs a lot of time and attention, and that is a huge focus for you, then that's a seasonal rock, right? Like that needs
Mm-hmm.
its own huge amount of space
Mm-hmm.
where as we work through that season, that can maybe shift over to life giving, the date nights,
Mm-hmm.
versus
Mm-hmm.
being the highest priority or homeschooling. I see a lot of people putting homeschooling. I had a sweet mom reach out to me and say, I, I, I'm thinking about giving up. Like homeschooling feels like such a big burden, and I just don't even know if I'm good enough. I think about giving up. That would be such a seasonal rock that everything else in her life, the sand needs to move out of the way for homeschooling, and that being this key piece to really focus on. Where for maybe someone who's in a groove, homeschooling's just over on life giving. Like that's, over here in this space. So
Yeah.
someone did ask how often, because they love this. This gives so much grace for the seasons that we're in and always changing. How often do you recommend redoing this priority map?
Yeah, so I found that after I did it, it resonated for me for a few years. And then I, at some point, was sitting down and I was like, I feel like there are some life-giving things I'm not getting to, or maybe my season has shifted. And so for me, I'm very intuitive about these types of things, but it's normal. Like some people would really benefit from revisiting this when they're doing their like yearly goal setting, or even if you're in a place where you're really trying to get in touch with your reality and really make those changes, visiting it quarterly could really help. And if you have never really done this type of thing before, it doesn't hurt for you to like have this with you and look at it every day and ask yourself, am I actually making choices with my day that aligns with the way I want my jar to look? Uh,
I was gonna recommend that. Like if someone's new to this and feels in chaos, looking at this every day, like rehearsing it in your mind. Is the day I have planned or set up in alignment with my priorities or worth just that habit? Because it can be habit, it can be repetition of being in a busy state and being so used to being just busy, busy that it
mhm,
feels abnormal to be working off a list like this. And we kind of train ourselves into. And for me, I also have noticed like every 3 months, we're really seasonal living as a farm family. And so every 3 months, the seasons change in outdoors and what we can do. And I've noticed that that's around the time where whenever I feel like things are falling apart and oh my gosh, I'm back on the floor, I'm like, oh, wait, no, no. It's that I've just gotten out of sync with this and I need to review and renew it.
yeah, yes. Yeah. And let's talk about sand next. And I saw a question here about book recommendations and podcasts. Like I want to, if we have time during the Q&A section, like give some more beyond just my podcast because there's a lot of amazing content out there. Like one, I just read Multipliers, the book Multipliers. If you feel overwhelmed and you have a lot to do and you have like children that you're responsible for, or literally anybody who's under you, you're supposed to be telling them what to do, you need to read Multipliers. If you have a team, you need to read Multipliers. Like I'm like, this is become one of my top 10 books. So that's just something I'm like, every mother needs to read this. Anyways, but yeah, we have the Make Space to Thrive podcast, and I put that in there, and y'all can go look that up. But let's talk about sand. Sand is stuff in your jar that is good within its limits and it's like unavoidable. So it's distracting if you're doing it at the wrong time, but also it's just kind of part of the overhead of life. Sand isn't bad. It just needs to be put in after everything else. So this is stuff like emails and DMs and texts, being on social media, if that is a life-giving thing for you, and interacting on social media can be sand. I have also organization admin for my business. Like it's so easy. Any business owner would relate to this. You sit down, you have work that you need to do. You need to write emails, you need to do something else. And you're like, let me just check Slack and knock off a bunch of easy work right now because I'm tired and I don't want to do the deep work, right? And so that's sand. That's the stuff that's supposed to come afterwards. Yes, you need to stay communicating with your team and all that jazz, but you need to do that after you have done the critical things that you're responsible to do to move the needle forward. And so those are that's what sand is. And I want you to just write down in that space just a few things. Let's see. Yeah, it's an open space. So you can write down. Some people are like, never done this before. And they're like, it's this and this and this and this. And they're just like, gotta fill up the whole thing with all of their, what they know is like necessary, but also distracting when not kept in its limits. Some people just have a few key things they need to focus on. So there's that open space there for that. And I'm curious what people are writing down as sand. Cherie's asking, am I understanding that this sheet is something we do for our life, but it's also for each project too? Like homeschool, there's the core things. Okay, so I did this for fun for my homeschool. It's actually the conference that Amber and I were both at together, and I was taking conference inspiration, and I was like, I need to life in a jar this because it's so easy for me as this visionary to just be like, whoa, we're throwing out everything that we plan to do this year, and we're gonna do all these new ideas instead. And so I just pulled this out for that purpose and made it fun for myself. But in general, this exercise is meant to just be like a good priority map for your life. But if you find it useful to do it for different projects, you're welcome to. It's just that was the secondary purpose of it. But yeah, we've got scrolling and screen time and being idle and answering texts as they come. Yep. Selling small things that take a ton of time. Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah. Yeah, and yeah. Um, yeah, some sand for me is reading books to continually learn. I do think research can really, for some of us, like, oh, I'm gonna look that up, I'm gonna look that up. Research can definitely be that. And then there's a space for you to to write down the stuff you want to keep out of your jar. And that's the stuff that you know that you really do not want to spend any of your time on, but it's tempting for you to do that. I have on mine, y'all don't have to share it in the chat if you don't want to. They can be very vulnerable, but you're welcome to. I have on mine comparison. There's so much time that I waste trying to like compare myself to others or just like sitting there fretting over comparison to others. I have a lot of like I have a lot of emotional ones on here as I'm looking at it. I have self-pity. You can waste a lot of time in that too. I just think it's so interesting because that's where the children of Israel were, right? In that self-pity place when Moses said, teach us to number our days. That's just very interesting. Unreasonable expectations, taking on other people's responsibilities. I'm pretty sure I'm a visionary coactive because I work so well inside of teams, but my problem is to then say, there's a need, I'm going to do it. There's a need, I'm going to do it. And just like pull that on coactives will relate to that of just taking on all this extra work rather than understanding that you're not the only person who can get those things done. And a lot of times it's other people's things, and you got to kind of back up and let other people do that. I think with us as mamas, like it's very easy for us to do that with our kids instead of teaching them to take responsibility for cleaning up after themselves, chores, and all those types of things. I've got random scrolling, worrying about things, impatience, that kind of stuff. So you also might have actual things that aren't just like emotional also that are in there. Um, yeah. Awesome. Okay, so you see then there is actually enough time, and this is a deep planning exercise that helps you to see and just reorganize your priorities and reorganize, like create a priority map that helps you to see that if you put your priorities first, then there will be enough time for everything that you're called to do. You just can't let the sand fill up your jar first. If you're struggling with believing that there's not enough time for everything you're called to do, it's because in your schedule you're allowing the sand or things you don't want in your jar at all to be filling up way more time than you realize, right? And then because everything feels like it doesn't fit, that's when you end up in that cycle of like, I'm just going to overhaul my life, but then it hits real life and your systems don't work. And then you dissociate, which is just making it worse. You're inviting more sand and other things or things that you don't want into your jar. And then you've got more fires. And that's what creates that downward spiral is whenever we are prioritizing backwards. So this, what you just experienced, like I said, this is, yes. Oh, that's going to be awesome in your family time. I love that. This is a deep planning exercise that you just experienced, and it's just the tip of the iceberg of the kinds of things that mamas can do to bring order out of chaos in our lives. And we exist because we really want to help mamas bring order out of chaos in your lives to not just enjoy, I mean, not just embrace that ongoing ministry of bringing order out of chaos, but enjoying it. Like we talk all the time, right, in our society about the mother's invisible mental load. And like I see that on social media all the time. The mother's invisible mental load. Nobody knows all the things we're caring about, all the things we've got going on in our minds and all of that. And it's real, but we contend that that mental load was actually supposed to be our joy. We are supposed to take all of these things that God has given us and joyfully steward them and give them back to Him by being intentional with the way that we're investing our time, with the way that we are putting the things into our jar each day, each week. And that's the thing about this is that if you understand what your jar is supposed to be, every time you sit down to do deep planning, you have the opportunity to dump out your jar and start over. That was something I didn't realize. Like back when I was like overwhelmed and depressed by the whole concept of the jar, was that I was like, I have sand first. I didn't know what to do with that. With my lack of good prioritization, eventually I learned, oh, that's what deep planning's for. You just sit down with a piece of paper, you get it all out of your head, you dump out your jar and you start over and you start with your priorities and then you do your, and you build your life around your priorities instead of reacting and randomness. So how often I dump out my jar and start over. In my real life, I am doing this. It depends on the day I'm having, but I'm doing it up to three or four or five times a day just by sitting down with my planner and like pivoting and figuring out what am I going to do next and what are my things that I have going on. Um, but some days I plan in the morning, dump out my jar and start over, so to speak, which at this point it's not so much starting over, it's just like sitting down with my planner and saying, okay, I know what my priorities are. And just because I have systems, I have all of these things I've learned how to do, these 6 practices that are on the screen, I've memorized them and internalized them. And so I'm just like sitting down with my planner for 15 minutes in the morning and I'm like, okay, I know what my priorities are. And then I walk away from my planner and it's like I'm on autopilot. Like my subconscious has been trained to prioritize effortlessly and what I need to do gets done even if I'm not touching my planner. So some days are like that. Other days, there's a lot of what feels like competing priorities, but I'm like, nope. God has promised to give us everything we need for life and godliness, and that includes enough time. So he doesn't set us up for failure. He doesn't say you're going to have to choose between doing what's right for your business, what's right for your kids, or what's right for your marriage right now. He doesn't put us in those impossible situations. The enemy is tricking us to think we're put in a possible situation. What he's actually doing is giving us an opportunity to grow in our executive functions and to bring order out of chaos in each one of those areas. And I like to use this tool for that purpose. And so I'll sit down if I feel like everything is like competing with each other. I just sit down and work it out. And that helps me to do that. The 6 practices are learn to plan in context, the morning habit, taming your to-do list, building a week rhythm, The Art of Flexible Time Blocking, and Setting Rooted Goals. Each one of these are research-based principles and practices, and it actually only takes 6 weeks to master them if you focus, if you make it your seasonal rock. If we can master these things, then we're going to find that their approach to life is actually working, and it works with our productivity personalities. We can craft this time management system that really supports our lives and the way that we're called to work, and takes our life in a jar and actually translates it into where we're being able to keep our priority map going inside of our daily lives with the choices that we're making each day and keeping them in aligned with our goals. Practice one is learning to plan in context. And so that works with contextual anchoring, and it helps your brain to actually understand how what you're trying to do, your goals, will play out in your real life. And there's like a whole system around that, but we made it super easy to be able to jump into. You took the productivity personality quiz, you're like literally already halfway done with that practice just because you know your productivity personality. But how do you apply that? That's what practice one is showing you, how to apply that with your productivity season and all those things. Practice two is the morning habit, and that actually helps you use the Zeigarnik effect in your favor. So we talked about, if you open all these tabs, right? How are you going to be able to close them without just finishing the tasks? Science says that all it takes is coming up with a plan, writing it down. If you write down a plan for how you're going to accomplish those tasks, it closes the loop. It closes that tab in your mind. So the morning habit is when I'm doing that, I'm decluttering my mind, I'm getting it all out on paper, closing those tabs, and then when I write down what my top targets are for the day, I'm opening 3 tabs, just 3. And my subconscious is going, okay, this is what we're working on today. And it starts solving problems when I'm not even thinking about it, which is fantastic, but it can, because it's not clogged with like 100 different tabs that are open. We have context switching. That's the problem, right? And I talked about that massive to-do list. Taming your to-do list. There's a practice that helps you to do that and create a time management, a task management system for yourself in your planner. We have decision fatigue, and that is solved with a week rhythm. And we show you how to create a week rhythm around your real life, your real goals, and around your jar, which is great. And so that you actually have space for your seasonal rocks, for your foundational rocks, for your life-giving pebbles, whatever you want. You can put that in your week rhythm and stop having so much decision fatigue. And then that opens up your creative bandwidth for what you're called to do. Follow through. There is a way to support your mind so that you will actually follow through. And the Art of Flexible Time Blocking will help you to do that. And there, I can't get into all the research for this, but right now, there is so much research to back up why doing time blocking, even the simplest version, we teach a very simple version of it that's very flexible, that is very intuitive and responsive to God's providence in your life, pivoting when things change. But that time blocking increases follow through like you would not believe, just because you took the time to do it. And it doesn't take long. Like guys, like 3 minutes in the morning, I time block my day. And then sustainable motivation. When you set rooted goals, rooted is a whole acronym. We can't go into all of it. But if you set rooted goals that are actually in context of your real life, they are rooted in your core calling, is the first part of that acronym, all the way through to pivoting with God's providence, developing your goals with God's providence. When you set a rooted goal, your brain's, instead of being stressed out by your goals, your brain's like, I see how it all comes together. My goals support my life supports my goals, and it all comes together really, really well. And that's the rooted goal setting system.
I was reading the chats and so many women, like, I feel this, I'm crying, I have chills, this is me, and we both see that every single day. I'm so grateful, Shelby. Thank you for creating this. Thank you for following God's calling and giftings that He gave you to, I mean, do you guys just feel it? Like, this is so special and so unique. I've never seen anything else like this with this mission. So thank you so, so much for that. I'm really, really grateful.
Absolutely. It was so wonderful to get to hang out with you guys. How much time and everything the course takes, the way it's designed is to help you organize your life as you go. And so it really depends on how you are using the course it walks you through, immediately starts getting you started with organizing your life. And we did not make it super video heavy on purpose. We want implementation time. And so that's what it's all designed around. Like, do this little exercise, implement it, make it work in your real life, connecting your planner to your real day. And so I can't ever give an answer to how long it takes because it's going to be different for each person, but it's not something where you're like, okay, I have to sit here and watch 12 hours before I even get started at all. We made it where it like integrates with your real life immediately. Okay, our podcast is Make Space to Thrive. You can look it up on iTunes or you can Google it. Okay, just make sure you do the full system. You can choose the cover and the checkout. Yeah, add the other things. So you want to choose the cover and then scroll down, add your classic day planners, and then add your annual. All three things to count. It will, if you add all three of those to cart, you will get a full system discount.
These covers, oh my goodness, they drop their
Fall collection. And my sister hand makes them after she puts the kids to bed. She has 6 kids and homeschools and then goes out there and like makes these covers by hand, which is amazing. And she designed them. They stand up to the demands of mom life. We have people who have used these covers, the first batch that we released in 2020, and they are still going strong and they just look gorgeous. So our visionaries. Visionaries, are you feeling a little bit better by knowing that you can focus on one seasonal rock? You focus on one seasonal rock instead of all of them. Let some of your other ideas become life-giving pebbles and they will grow. And task crushers, I hope you're feeling better about the fact that your relationships and the time that it takes to pour into your relationships are going to take up space in your jar, and that it's very possible for task crushers to be like, let their to-do list actually can become their sand because you're just busy, 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 and you're working kind of randomly on whatever it is that's on your list, but you're not tying it to your long-term goals and your relationships. If you start with your big rocks and then your seasonal rocks and move out from there, then your to-do list becomes fuel for those things rather than sand distracting you from those things. And then for our strategists, I hope that this encourages you that there's a way forward. You love systems, right? If your relationships are central inside of your jar and all your systems are about your relationships, then you will begin to creatively come up with ways to serve your people with your systems. And we teach all about how to do all of this in the course. You figure like if you've got to tie them though, you got to anchor them to your long-term goals, your foundational rocks, your seasonal rocks, and then your systems become very useful and doable, and you can sell them to your family. You can be like, this is why we're doing what we're doing. But if they're about your family will start to get it. And we explain how to do all of that inside of the course. And then coactives. For you, it's very easy for everybody else to fill up your jar, but your goals and your vision for life gets dumped out all the time. So I'm hoping that what you feel right now, if you're very socially motivated, you're always helping other people, that making space in your jar for the things that you are excited about, that you are called to do, making space for those things inside of your jar is very, very important, and that you are called to be a leader in your home. And so that means you being lit up with the vision that God has given you and learning how to work independently and make those things happen. And that's what we do. We deep dive into all that inside of the course to show you how to turn this into a whole system. But I wanted to, yeah, if anybody has any questions about that, I think we're wrapping up here. Let's see. Oh, I'm so glad, Mickey. I'm so glad you made it a priority too. This has changed my life to be able to actually take the deep work time needed to figure these things out instead of continuing to do it on the fly.
Oh, it's so neat, guys, is just like the connection. I'm going to share a little bit of this backstory that Shelby was telling me the other day. Is she worked full time in publishing with her husband before they had kids and homeschooled. And it was so cool to see how everything in our life that I feel like God has brought us through or that he's put in front of us or in our space seems to, if we're following the Lord and wanting to be good stewards, connect to the next thing. And I thought it was so neat how this business that was laid on your heart, like were given the tools in the past and what you did in the past to bring this forward, and just the blessing that God connects it for us. when we're moving forward and pursuing him.
Yes, he is so kind to us and he absolutely meets us where we are, no matter where we are. And just it's so much of it is taking the deep work time to get quiet before him and sit down with pen to paper and like just sort things out quietly with him.
Danielle asked, "Do I feel like it's helped me feel less overwhelmed with home life and biz?" So you guys know, have a huge business that I'm stewarding, and then our home and our family, and I very much do. I'm gonna bring this up here. So I took all my books out so you can't see it, but this holds four different journals in it. So two which are the month and the year and the month, and then I have my two other little journals in there. One's like all business, and then one is just my thoughts. And I bring this to church, and like I have our preacher notes written down in that journal. So I love that it fits all four. But what I do, just getting into the nitty gritty, Danielle, with the business side, and we'll talk all about this. If you do get the whole system, we'll do the private call next month to set it up and talk more about this. And then Shelby and I have talked about just doing a business one for women in home businesses, and how fun that would be. But what I do every morning and every night, especially every night, every single night, this is my biggest tip. I will crawl out of bed to go get this, and I bring it to bed. Is I have so this is our whole entire October, super packed, full October. And I have my week right here. I'm going to give you guys an example. So this was September. Okay. So they have these little windows. So you guys know I'm big about writing down wins. So here was, you write down your Monday. I would look at it opens like this. I would look at my week that I had. I would put everything important here. And then this is just Monday. So I write down my top things that I want to get done on Monday. This is the night before. I'm planning it out, planning out my work. Top things I want to get done. I write down my thoughts, like the thoughts I want to have about my business, about my home, because this is what I want to keep center in my mind. And then I'm time blocking over here. This is how I use it. Shelby taught me a little bit different, but I put my time blocks over here and then my big key things here. And so every single day, every night, I'm writing this all down. And in the morning, this is the first thing I'm looking at. I'm not deciding what to do. It's already clear and in front of me and centered. I'm just checking through as I go. I also love that every week has its own tab right here. So like the big things I want to focus on, there's a habit tracker for the whole week over here. Do you guys see, like that's Monday, this is Tuesday, and it has those window peaks, Wednesday, and I'm able to keep the whole week here, and then things I want to focus on. So like I had a gal, I was tracking her points and we were knocking them off as we went. But that's how I use mine. And before I found Shelby in this, I was working out of 3 different planners. I had the ugliest lime green planner that was a teacher's planner that was so ugly. I was like embarrassed to even bring it to any meetings. It was just so incredibly ugly. So when I saw this, I was with Leah, my friend. We were at the homeschool conference, and she was not surprised at all that I had bought another planner because it's kind of my MO, always trying to find something. And I told Shelby, I was like, I want to partner with you because this is it. Like this. And then after hearing her talk and her desire and her goals and her place that she was coming from as being a Proverbs 31 steward of everything that God had given her, I understood why this system worked so well for that. So that's why I'm just grateful that she brought her ideas forward so we can all be blessed by it. Hopefully that answered it, Danielle.
Hey,
I love
Amber.
Yes.
Hey, sorry. Do you mind if I ask a quick question on camera? Well, not on camera, but
Yeah, go
audio
ahead.
real quick.
Yeah.
Okay. It was in the chat, but I don't know if you guys saw it. So one of my questions was with the personality test or the quiz that we did. So if you find that you get an answer, like I got strategist, but I kind of feel like I align more with like the to-do list person. Do you just recommend taking it again? Maybe answer like revisiting the questions?
Shelby, that's for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yes, read if that's happening. I do recommend like reading through the different personality results, which should be on the page that you landed on, allowing you to click through them
Okay.
to see what resonates with you. But yeah, you're probably a visionary task crusher, or a task crusher with some visionary side to you if you most relate to that. Is that what you said? You most relate to task
It
crusher?
was, yeah, it was strategist was my
Oh,
outcome.
strategist.
But I was like, oh
Okay.
my goodness, I'm a to-do list queen, task oriented. Like I run a business, I have family, all those things. And so
Okay,
I was like,
yeah.
every time you're talking about that, I'm like, that's totally me. And actually, side note, I know a lot about the Enneagram. And when I took that test, I actually got it wrong the first time. So I was like, maybe it was the way I answered the question. So, okay, I'll take it again.
Yes,
And I'll look through that.
absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And it's all about like you figuring out for yourself. So like
Right.
we did the best that we could with the quiz to help assess and make it fun and short and everything, but help assess like you might be this if you're interested in these things. But the best way is to click through and see. And if you're like, that's me, it's how does she know who I am? Now you've found yours, and you might find
Right.
multiple ones that are a combination.
Right. Okay. And then my second question that I asked Amber, but it kind of applies to you too. So, in having this planner, do you all also have a digital calendar in your phone, or do you just nix that and say, I only look at the planner, I bring it everywhere I go? That's like my planner and calendar.
For me, I'm a paper and pen person. If I put it in my phone or computer, it's gone. I have to physically have it in my hands. And then, like I said, I leave this even open on the kitchen table. And like when I sit down to work, this is what I'm looking at. So I don't do anything digital, but I that's how my brain functions though. Shelby,
Uh,
what about
we
you?
have we have a lot of people in our community who do combine a calendar, a digital calendar, and a lot of times the reason they do that is because they share one with their husband or with their team, and they need to be able to see that shared calendar view when it comes to planning. But what we always recommend is that you do plan also in your planner and do it analog. And the reason why is because this is like a brand new problem, right? Analog versus digital planning, because the digital world is like new. We're the first ones to really experience and use it for good, and not learn how to use it for good and not let it just completely distract us and string us out. And so with analog planning, there are things with analog planning you cannot possibly experience with digital planning, which is why we have an analog planner, and why we put so much effort in it. It made me so much easier, guys, just to sell a course. I'm not even kidding. But this is we want to get this into mama's hands because analog planning allows you to, when you write down, you're doing what's called double encoding. So you're thinking about what you're writing down. You're working it out as you go. Your brain is solving problems without you even realizing it, and you're memorizing it, and it's becoming internalized just through the process of writing it down. We know that from, we've heard that writing physical notes can be better than typing them out because the handwriting actually makes it internalized and you remember it better. That can be to your great advantage when you do analog planning. You actually remember what your priorities are so much better. Another thing is that analog planning, the way that we set up our layouts with this planner is everything is very contextualized. What happens whenever we just do digital planning is we've got a calendar for our team, a calendar for our family, a calendar for sports, a calendar for homeschool, and all these different things. And then we go and, like, when we're in our homeschool box, we max it out and we have all these amazing homeschool plans. But our homeschool plans don't work with the sports plans, and they don't work with the husband's plans, and they don't work with the business meetings and bandwidth that takes, right? And so like we've built all these different worlds for ourselves with these elaborate time management systems and calendars, and it's so easy to do that digitally. And then everything is in competition. We're constantly getting all these notifications, stop and do this, stop and do that, and we're like just overwhelmed with all these competing priorities. That is what digital planning can do. So what we teach people to do is to, if you have a digital calendar, shared calendar, like I've done that with my husband in many seasons where we had a shared calendar, and we have a lot of people in our community who do that. What you want to do is make sure that shared calendar is true, it stays updated, and you're actually using it, and make it an official part of your workflow, but keep your analog calendar central in your life and keep that fully updated with what's on your shared calendar and also with everything else that's hitting your mind. When you're writing it down on your analog calendar, you are being able to see when you have competing priorities, when you have things that are not going to work out in a way you cannot digitally. So like that has helped me not do things like plan a huge launch when we're about to go out of state on a road trip. We travel a lot. Like, like literally where it's day and then road trip. And I was supposed to be packing, but I'm also running this launch at the same time. Those types of things. Like, it helps me to have sanity in my calendar when I can see here are all of the things my kids have going on. My husband has this going and this. And all of this, if I start to see things like being in competition with each other, be proactive about solving those problems. And you can't do that digitally like you can sitting down quiet without any notifications distracting you with a planner and an intuitive system that's been designed around your productivity personality, the way that you work and the way you think, and has all your stuff inside of it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also I love that this is so beautiful and small because I can take it everywhere. It fits in my purse. It fits, it's just like a good size. With my husband, keeping everything analog is we sit down every Sunday night and we look at the week and I'll ask him, when are you hunting? When are you working? Like we'll plug in like that and I mark it on the calendar for that. And then the other thing I love in here is like, this is a whole, I don't know if y'all can see this. I'm just going to show you because this is how you could use it for your husband too. I've done on some weeks. This is a whole week spread. These have the days, right? But you have these blocks. So you could either do like your meal plan here for dinner, or you could do your husband's schedule in here so that you can see just what he has for the week. So there's plenty of space for stuff like that, I would say. But a huge, huge key thing on your planner too is I will not remember I showed you I'll write down every night the work that I want to accomplish. If I write something down and then I look at my time space and there is no space for that to fit, then I have to decide remove something else or remove this to the next day. And that self-awareness of not overbooking my work and what I think I can do has been a huge, huge help in my business. If I write it down and I don't see a clear spot for it, then I've got to shuffle things. So, but are there any other questions, friends? These are all so good. Okay. I think my husband and my kiddos just came home. I hear them out there. I just hope everyone feels so encouraged and that bringing it back to that if the Lord's called you to it, and like you said, Shelby, if our hands are full, this is a blessing, not something to be overwhelmed by, and that we are called to be good stewards and we're equipped. We're equipped to be good stewards, and He gives us the wisdom for that. And it's continual. So it's okay if there's a rough day. That's just when you get to say, all right, let me go back to my jar. This was a rough day. Maybe things got out of alignment. And how can I shift that back over tomorrow instead of it's a me problem, right? And that just gives
yeah,
some hope. So
absolutely. Absolutely.
thank you so much.
All right. It was so
Anything else?
wonderful to meet all of you. Yeah. And if you have any questions, you could DM us on the shop or DM me on Instagram at evergreenplanner.com, or Amber if you have questions for her.
Yeah.
And yeah, we
All
just love
right.
hanging out with you guys.
Yes, we did. So much fun. Thank you, friends, so, so much. And thank you, Shelby. I appreciate you
Absolutely.
all. All right.
Bye,
We'll
you
see you on
guys.
Instagram. Bye, friends.